Previously on the Game On podcast.
So you've got to be honest with people, and they got to trust you. And if they trust you, you got a decent chance to get the best out of them. And that's not what was happening at that stage. No.
And then the administrative career, Collingwood, you nearly got up to in the grand final there, where ironically a goal umpiring call against Rocker probably cost Collingwood dearly there. So you're unlucky there, and then of course we'll get onto the Geelong side of it with Hales and that side of it. But yeah, great career in administration as well, Barmy. Go through some, starting off at Collingwood and all that sort of things.
Yeah, well, the Collingwood at the time was fantastic, and we were a bit stiff. We did lose a couple of grand finals and against the AFL team because the AFL looked after Brisbane in those days. But that was just the way it was. But we were a little bit stiff, but we were pretty competitive and very strong. And I think I had a reasonable influence there, and I really kind of enjoyed my Collingwood time, but I'd sort of come to the end of it in the end, and I was lucky enough to get to Geelong, who were fantastic. They're wonderful culture. Cookie was fantastic. I mean, Tommy Harley was an old Adelaide mate, as it turned out, and he's done really well, and he's now, CEO of Sydney or whatever. So, no, he's a really good fella. But Geelong was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Bomber was good fun in the early days, and then we appointed Scotty as well. So, I genuinely, I enjoyed the Collingwood time. I really did. But even more so at Geelong, I've still got a lot of time for Geelong. I think they're a really good bunch of people and do things the right way, personally. But I've been lucky. I've had some good things to do in footy, and then I went back to Collingwood for a couple of years because I wanted to help Bucks, and I saw him the other day, and he's a terrific person. But I wasn't really able to quite get that done either, sadly. But that's only because I think they went a bit mad themselves from inside. But then that led me to going back to the Tigers, which in the end was probably is going to be my legacy in footy because I'm a Richmond man deep down because I played for them, and I've had some wonderful times, and I'm still hanging around there. I'm not doing quite as much as I did before, but still very engaged and very much a Richmond man. And Rick, I can't walk down the street without somebody talking to me, so that's probably not a bad thing, is it?
Not at all.
No.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined by Malcolm, and we did miss last week's episode. I was a little bit under the weather, and it was grand final week, and it would be remiss if I didn't play this. And, mate, obviously, we're talking Barmy, obviously, a couple of weeks ago about his time at Richmond, but it was Collingwood's day to shine on Saturday.
Oh, what a game. The highest margin was 13 points in the entire game. It ebbed and flowed. Some of the greatest goals, let alone grand final. Zach Bailey's too, just ex-Nord boy, so
yes,
we claim him.
Absolutely.
Despite the fact he might have only played one or two junior games, but won't worry about that.
That's right.
But, couple of Zach's goals and just a fantastic game. Look, I do want to bring up one thing in the game, Pete, and it's been carried on since about the free kick to the illustrious Brownlow medalist, and then the play on call. In that, from Lachie Neale, and that when Zach Bailey grabbed the ball and kicked it, I want to really emphasise the umpire got that correct. Mm-hmm. As an umpire, that's the instructions. And don't believe me, it's gone amongst the umpiring fraternity.
Sure.
and Colin Rouston really didn't muck around. That's the correct call.
Initially, I thought the umpire might have been a bit out of position, but I think if you do actually look at it in its totality, you're right.
It's written, if the player decides to take the advantage, it's play on. Bailey kicked the ball. Now, if you want to change it and argue, well, hang on, he didn't hear and all that, that's fine to give the umpire a bit more leeway. That's okay. But don't, at the moment, say the umpire made a mistake because he didn't. The umpire, under the current instructions, and I want to really emphasise that, nailed it.
Absolutely.
He's 100% correct, and that's a pretty important difference.
So we'll take it a little bit of a step back and we'll have a quick just preview of the prelims, which generally are the ones that you go, you know what, they're absolute belters, classic games. Melbourne and Carlton played out an absolute beauty, and that last 30, 40 seconds from Carlton, switching the play, taking it on at all risks. You thought when Lever marked at half back there that it was just going to happen for Melbourne. And to Carlton's credit, they certainly they did the job against Melbourne. And then Port Adelaide threatened all year against.
I think injuries caught up.
Yeah, and sort of were in the right place at the right time at times. And on this occasion against GWS, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with some injuries that, you're right, had caught up with them a little bit. We did talk previously about some underdone players and some players that weren't quite hitting their straps at the right time, and that's what cost them really at the end of the day.
You can make a case that they should have had a look at a few other players during the minor round, and then Hinkley virtually, in the end, well, geez, we've got to play with what we've got. You know, Dixon vastly underdone, obviously.
Yep.
And that... Look, Finlayson, massive best wishes to him. Bugger football. Football's irrelevant.
Absolutely.
For what he's going through, and you can understand where his form had fallen off. And you can still say he should have played probably instead of Dixon still.
Yes.
So, yeah, look, they didn't nail it, Port. Pretty amazed and disappointed at the decision personally on Nathan Bassett.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that one a little bit later.
Bizarre.
And then GWS throw the absolute kitchen sink at Collingwood in the prelim. With Collingwood winning by a point in the end. GWS for me, and I sort of been harking on most of the year that, geez, they're a tough team to play against, and they proved it.
And yet again, so Laura Kane for me is batting massively 0 out of 2 so far, that the Maynard fiasco, and then to come out and say, when the umpires were criticised for the lack of the Kelly trip, the obvious green too high, oh, no, the umpires didn't make a mistake. Don't do that, Laura. Come out and admit. You get far more respect when admitting in any workforce, in anything, where actually admit, no, we made some mistakes and blunders there. Don't try and cover it. For me, she is a massive worry for the game so far. I don't think I've ever seen anyone in any job seem so far out of their depth as Laura Kane does so far.
Yeah,
massive worry.
Toby didn't look like he had a neck, but then Jack Ginnivan didn't really have a neck for most of the season either. And you see McRae put up his hand, I think, at around 17, 18, going, we finally got one. These players
I want to come back.
Buckle at the knees a little bit as well. So you've got to play that into some of the decision making.
And I'm sorry, for as much as Craig McRae's been unbelievable. He's been 11 out of 10.
Absolutely.
His one mistake was not coming down on Ginnivan. When Ginnivan did it at the start, was getting the freeze. Collingwood were very happy to go along with that ride. Mm-hmm. Instead of McRae, long-term picture here.
Yep.
He's cooking his own goose.
Yep. They're going to wise up to it.
Let's get this out and get it out of his system.
Absolutely.
And now Ginnivan's cooked himself, and he cooked himself deservedly in terms of an umpire's always going out of that. Now, the one on Toby, I don't think Toby Green does that, and I just think that was a blatant too high free kick.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the Toby tax does come into thing there.
Yep. Fair call. And then Brisbane, up at the Gabba, Carlton at quarter time, I'm sitting there going, maybe I need to book a grand final ticket and crack the beers open and start to enjoy the footy a little bit. And then you sort of knew Brisbane were going to come, but they completely changed their game, and it caught Carlton unawares, and that was probably my biggest disappointment is they weren't able to adapt.
A couple of errors by Carlton, a couple of times where they picked slow play when it should have been fast play and vice versa. Because I admit I didn't see. I was working at the Amateur League Grand Final at Norwood, so didn't see until the score till halfway through the second quarter. And by then Brisbane were back in it. Went over, watched the last few minutes in the Premier's Bar at Norwood before leaving, and at halftime you knew Brisbane were home effectively.
They just had the game on their terms from quarter time. But, Carlton really sort of they threw their haymaker early and it landed, but they weren't able to knock over Brisbane. And to be honest with you, nobody's been able to knock Brisbane over up at the Gabba this year. And it just shows you winning home games as an interstate club is such an advantage.
Oh, and that's where Adelaide stuffed up with a couple at home, which they carry on still about the umpiring mistake against Sydney. Well, how about their own errors?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we move along, like we talked about just a little while ago, the grand final, absolute classic, 4 points. 12-18. I thought Collingwood might have kicked themselves out of it at one stage. Brisbane just found a way of staying in there. Lachie Neale was fantastic, and we'll talk about him now, actually, as the surprise Brownlow medalist. I mean, he was probably in the conversation a little bit, but geez, if Nick Dacos had played one or two more games, we're talking completely different, aren't we?
I just, for mine, as an umpire, and believe me, all umpires, we talk about this all the time, that there's quite often games where you have no idea. Even the 3 vote might stand out, even the 2 vote, and then you come to the 1 vote and you've just got no idea, and it's just whatever. And then how many medals? I say...
Does this go away from the umpires, or should we leave it with the umpires but give them some stats to work with a little bit?
Yeah, have that. But my bit isn't... That's, for me, is not the problem. My bit is that it's promoted and has always been the highest individual award in the game. You know, the McGarry, the Brownlow, the Sandover, etc.
Yep.
It's an umpire's award. The highest vote in football should be the coach's award and the MVP. Getting regarded as the best player amongst your peers should be the greatest.
I think that's changing, though, slowly.
It's getting there. Brisbane really cost a lot of that a few years ago. Jono Brown led a bit of fun and had a particular player who wasn't known for his physicality, won the most courageous or whatever, and that put those awards back a fair bit where, hang on, if the players aren't going to take it seriously,
then,
So that really hurt for a while, and it was, look, I get the joke.
Absolutely.
But it didn't really think, shit, hang on, what's the long-term ramifications here? And I think that probably put those awards back 5 to 10 years. Look, okay, I'll say allegedly John O'Brien, someone from Brisbane.
That's fine.
That's probably the better way to phrase it.
Right. Hey,
phrase it.
We can edit that. That's no problem.
Yeah.
But, certainly Lachie Neale winning his second, obviously, once at Freo and once at Brisbane. Champion player.
Oh, look, he is an absolute champion.
And he's a South Australian too. So we'll claim it from that point of view as well. But, but where to for Brisbane now, for me, their window, and I don't know, it's such a cliche word, their window's closing a little bit more. But again, if they can continue to win games at the Gabba, they put themselves in a pretty
they're going to put
position.
themselves in that window place. Look, a lot of people are really hard on Eric Hipwood. That's his year back after a knee reco. Now, quite often players need that year and then the next year. Danaher was better, a lot more consistent overall. So I don't really think they've got Zorko, Gardner maybe. They haven't got. I think only Gardner's only 27. Sorry, so a bit unfair on there. But Zorko's probably the only one who's maybe tinkering around the edge. But
the matchups with Collingwood though are what's key. Look, for me anyway.
It's such a fine line. At the moment, we'd be saying, if Brisbane get up, we're saying, geez, are they in line for another dynasty? Collingwood probably. Again, I think let's also herald Collingwood's game style with that. The highlight move for me was the risky kick from back to Howe in the middle, who took off, kicked long to Bobby Hill.
Yes.
Now, Collingwood have won a premiership with McStay injured,
Yes.
Mycheck did very little.
Yes.
Frampton was in the side purely to try and negate Andrews.
Yes. And a like for McStay.
But did nothing offensively. In fact, he had an absolute stinker offensively.
Yep.
And that, so they got nothing. And Cameron, when he went forward, Cox, when he went forward, did very little. So they've won a premiership with no input whatsoever from a tall key.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's more a tick to their game style, that they create enough opportunities. They kicked 12, and they did miss some they should have kicked.
Yep.
So it was a great game. I think another tick for the small forward potential impact. Like Bobby Hill was brilliant.
Yep.
McCreary had his moments. He kicked a few points where if he's kicked 3 of those, he's suddenly in the mix as well.
Absolutely.
So
it was a bit of a masterstroke, though, for me, putting Cox into the ruck, being a basketballer.
He was very good.
He did give them just that little bit more of a look at that first look at the ball. And I was sitting with a mate of mine who's at Mad Sydney, and he's talking about Grundy. We want Grundy because of that tack.
And
I said Collingwood are probably going to win this game on the basis that they've moved him from being a forward experiment into a more natural role of tapping a ball.
And that ruck tap he got after Cameron had kicked the goal to hit the front. And then, yes, it was brilliant by Dacos, the handball to De Goey, but it did start from Cox's tap.
Exactly right. Again, natural basketballer, knows how to tap the ball. Suits that role.
Yep.
So Collingwood were able to adapt on the run all year. They've done it now for the last 2 years, where they've played in some unbelievably tight games and always seem to come out on top. Big tick for McRae. And just the culture that seems to have changed at Collingwood.
On a massive thing, like Noble was an amazing mission after 83 consecutive. But how good was Markov in those couple of finals? So he's gone from obscurity, gets invited down to Collingwood pre-season. No, we're not going to have you.
Just in case.
Goes to have a run. Goes to trains at Carlton. Then there's another injury back at Collingwood, so he's back at Collingwood. Gets in there and has his best year.
And now he's a premiership player. Unbelievable. All I can say is congratulations to Collingwood, and let the silly season begin, and we'll talk about that one a little bit later as well. All right, let's move on to the SANFL.
We're from Tigerland, a fighting fury, we're from Tigerland. In any weather you will see us with a grin, risking head and skin if we're behind the net.
And obviously Glenelg taking out this year's premiership, and right from the get-go, most impressive team, ball movement-wise, that I've seen for the last couple of years.
Sitting with Raph Sturt and Paddy Graham, some couple of Pembroke mates, and Raph went, righto, come on, let's Con Rulebook, give us your tip. Margin and Jacko medalist.
Yes.
And I've gone Glenelg 24 points and Luke Hosey.
Yes.
I did say Luke Hosey as he kicked his first goal. I will say it was there that we did it a couple of minutes in.
Yep. He just looked like he was going to have a day out no matter what. That was the thing.
He's a real confidence player, and as soon as he snapped that first one, I said, hey, Hosey's on.
Yes.
And, I wish I'd done that before the game with the tab. We might be in Bali doing this, mate.
Maybe. You're right. First goal, even the first couple of minutes, you could just see Glenelg's attack on the ball and their positioning, a little bit like what Norwood was last year. Their positioning was very, very good when it came to shutting a lot of forward movement down, and Glenelg just seemed to be able to take that to a whole new level right from the get-go.
Sturt hit the post a couple of times early, McFadden with a left foot snap. And look, for mine, Glenelg were just workmanlike. It was a little bit like, say, Norwood in 12 against Westies. Just did enough what they had to do to win the game.
Yep.
I always thought Glenelg had the game totally under control. Even when Sturt kicked those couple of few goals in a row in the third quarter, and by that stage I was with Tim Jackson and a couple of Sturt boys, were coming back, and Glenelg has still got this under control.
Little bit like Collingwood, a little bit, that they sort of seem to have the game in control, but Sturt was sort of hanging around the mark a little bit. But you're right. There's nothing more that I can say about Glenelg at the moment than their professionalism. New coach for the first time. coming in very, very late to the year. Structure seems very, very sound. Some very, very good players. Just, like you said, workmanlike. I don't know where to go from here.
Let's
just applaud them. That's the beauty about it.
Reserves premiers as well in what was a great game. That was actually, being honest, a better game than the league game. Mm-hmm. Better contest anyway.
Yep.
So that, and their juniors, yes, they're going to lose some who will be drafted and that, but they've got, from having commentated Glenelg and seeing their 18s and 16s, they've got 3 or 4 who will be good league footballers for Glenelg Football Club.
Absolutely, and once again, we congratulate Glenelg on the 2023 Premiership, and I'm assuming that there's probably still a few of the boys that are celebrating. The chimney unveiling would have happened Monday or Tuesday as per usual, and usually kicks on for a few days. I was actually speaking with a Glenelg supporter last night, and let's just say that they were still doing some autographs and still down at the base. So congratulations to the Glenelg Football Club. All right, we move on to the AFLW, mate.
No, on Glenelg, if I didn't mention Richard Douglas and Sam Balderstone, I might have been.
I did actually see
a bit
Dougie
of trouble there.
Cool.
So yes,
fair call. All right, we'll move on to the AFLW. Adelaide once again starting to assert a little bit of dominance once again, sitting second on the table at the moment. With a record win against GWS the week before. Obviously, we're playing a little bit of catch-up here. But then another win, obviously, over the Suns by 32 points.
Yeah, I went along on Sunday. Look, I've got to be honest, didn't think the standard was quite as good. I thought there were a lot of drop marks. I did ask Matty Clark and a couple of players afterwards, was it windy down lower sort of thing? And a girl said, yeah, it was a bit. But, yeah, I didn't think it was quite as good as it has been. Mind
you, having to back up from a sort of a club record winning margin the week before, sometimes there can be that little bit of a letdown.
Oh, and Gold Coast played pretty defensively. They were defensive on Mariner and all that, so it became a bit of a struggle. But Adelaide always it was a little bit like the grand final in that regard of the SANFL grand final. Adelaide always had the game well and truly under control. But it'll be interesting to see this week against Melbourne's the test to see where they're at.
Port Adelaide just going down by 6 points to West Coast over in Perth. Entertaining game at times, but Port are just lacking 1 or 2 experienced players. That's really what it gets down to at the moment.
They probably fall away a bit. Their list still obviously at the start and that. So, yeah, let's just wait and see on that.
And then we move on, as you mentioned, round 6, Melbourne v Adelaide, 1v2. This one's going to be an absolute belter. Where do we see this one playing out? I mean, really, at the end of the day, it should be prime time Friday night, but unfortunately it's 2:35 on a Saturday.
Yeah, look, I think that's one of those things that happens in programming with anything. Yep. Look, it's not the be-all and end-all to win the game. It's certainly not the end of the season for the loser.
No.
It's just, and that. So, look, I think Melbourne at the moment, I do think Melbourne are a bit better than Adelaide at the moment, but we'll see that we will see a bit more on Saturday.
Reigning premiers have lost a couple of players, have gained a couple of players, but I think what we're starting to see is that the teams that have been in since sort of day one, the structure, the ball movement, some of those sort of key things are really starting to show through, and the teams that have come in a little bit later are still sort of playing that little bit of catch-up, which was always going to happen, unfortunately.
And I was privileged to end up in Adelaide's presentation upstairs at Unley after the game. Full credit to Matty Clark and Phil Harper, the way they conduct that. It's very much team-orientated.
Yep.
And then Tim Silvers came in and gave a presentation at Danielle Ponta for her 50th.
Yep.
And, it was really well done by Adelaide Footy Club. A couple of shy girls and young Martin who got the trademark player award, and he made Marcel Marceau look like loud, so that was quite amusing.
Yep.
And she thought very similar to Cam Ball at Nord in that way. That'd be a great conversation between those two.
There you go.
Be very quiet, put it that way. And But, yeah, it was good. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And then Port Adelaide taking on Sydney at Alberton Oval. Good opportunity for Port to notch up another win. Sydney going okay at the moment, but, I think Port at home, you'd have to back them at the moment.
They should win at home. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, we're going to go straight on actually to the NRL.
Yes,
now. Yes. This was an absolute belter of a final. The prelims didn't quite live up to what we thought they might, but Penrith being 24-8 or 24-6 down at the 56-minute mark.
Incredible.
I actually flipped channel very, very quickly, totally forgot about it for 5 minutes, come back, looked at the score and went, what the hell did Penrith do here? And then all of a sudden watched it and it was try and then another one and then a conversion and then another one. I'm like, they're going to win this. Sure enough, they've just come along and basically created NRL history by one of the biggest comebacks in NRL history.
Yeah, the state of Queensland and Brisbane, in terms of the cities, gone from
hero to zero pretty quickly.
From what would have been a ridiculous celebrations up there if they'd won both, to as you said, hero to zero. Cleary, just wow, and wow is the word.
Who do we compare him to in the AFL, or who can we compare him to in the AFL?
Gee, maybe a Judd in terms of delivering in the crunch.
Yep,
the pace, acceleration. Yeah,
Michael Voss maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm probably not a. I struggle a little bit with rugby in that way.
Yep.
I admit I'm not. I don't know enough.
Yep.
Didn't grow up with it, so I'm just.
No. Fair call. Poor old 4X Gold would have been absolutely making squillions, but unfortunately not making as much as they would have hoped to. But congratulations also go to the Gold Coast Suns for winning the VFL Premiership, which we should have mentioned just a touch earlier. But good for them to get a win on the board. And I think it opens the door a little bit to potentially AFL reserves, but we'll talk about that one a little bit later. But wow, congratulations to the Penrith Panthers creating history. 3 in a row, biggest comeback in grand final history. There's not much more you can say. One of the best players going around and still going around. Who knows, they might go 4 in a row.
I think probably the best way to describe it is the 2 grand finals, 2 all-time classics. That's probably...
What a weekend for sport, really, at the end of the day. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got Tony Symonds from the Glenelg and Hawthorn football clubs coming up as part of our Past Players, Past Legends segment. And, of course, we were going to have Tony last week, and all that was obviously a bit of a highlight with Glenelg going top as well. So absolutely, so we'll follow up on that, and I'm sure he's going to let us know all about it.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Past players, past legends, past legends.
Today we're privileged to have Tony Symonds on the line. Simo at Glenelg, 81 to 86, 88 to 92, 225 games, 230 goals, dual premiership player in 85 and 86. And, of course, with Glenelg winning the flag, it was appropriate to have a Glenelg person with us, and it was meant to be the last week, but Pete was crook. Also a year at Hawthorn, also coached Glenelg in 95 and 96, but a real fanatical Bay man. Welcome aboard, Simo.
Thank you, boys. Nice to have a chat.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Like we do with most of our guests, we like to find out where it all started. Where did you play your junior footy? What was your junior club, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I didn't really have a junior club. I went through Sacred Heart College for my entire schooling, and a lot of my mates went out to other footy clubs, but I sort of didn't. So I sort of staggered my way through school and Sacred Heart system, and then went straight out to Glenelg to play under 17s in 1979. Sort of straight from second 18s at Sacred Heart. Never made the first.
Oh wow! See, some illustrious other people in that same sort of boat.
Yeah.
Rick Davies playing mainly third 18 at Prince's and that. So, and I didn't realise that, Simo.
We used to talk about that, Rick and I, when we were comparing our failures at Hawthorn. We often joked about him playing second or third 18, and I think it was PAC, I think he was.
Yes.
But me at Sacred Heart, so just couldn't crack it. I was pretty small in those days, and to be fair, I think the bloke who was coached in the first 18 in those days, brother Des Tuck, who was a ripper, was more concerned about my light frame really than playing me. So in a way, they might have done me a favour. Who knows?
Of course, at Glenelg, then you've always been a figure at the Bay, and sort of that group, the Fantastic Seven, which obviously probably caused a lot of damage on Adelaide nightclubs and all that side of things. Simo.
Well, it nearly didn't happen. I remember playing under 17s when I had just turned 17, so that was early 1979, and I was struggling to get a game. I'd sort of been on the bench, and Johnny Gordon, who just died recently, so he was an old South Adelaide man, was a ripper as well. And we got through to about June, and we only had 18 blokes fit. So I thought, well, I'm finally going to get started in the 18. They brought 2 blokes back who they'd sacked in February and put one of them into the side ahead of me. So I'm sort of sitting there before the game at Glenelg in tears thinking, this is it, I've had enough, I'm going. And fortunately I stayed, and bloke did a hammy, and I think late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter, bloke called Dave Conway, and I got on and played pretty well, I think more out of anger, and sort of held my spot for the rest of the year in under 17s, and then progressed on to under 19s the following year. So it got a bit tight at one stage about whether I'd ever survive there, coming off a average career at Sacred Heart as well. But things started to turn. I got a bit more confidence, and a year or so after that, I was playing seniors, which was great.
And then that group sort of really you stuck together. That real group's been very tight, and it really still now.
Yeah, well, the Magnificent Seven, as we called ourselves, it really probably should have come from someone else, but we decided that to do. And Walshy and Peter Maynard and Chris Duthie and Tony McGuinness and Chris McDermott and Stephen Kernahan, it was a sort of fair group coming through. And, Stephen and Chris and myself were playing under 17s together in 1979, or at least early in the year before Stephen and I think Chris both got sort of promoted up the tree a bit. And I remember I didn't really sort of wait for the crumbs. If Stephen was jumping for it, I'd just keep running, because 19 times out of 20 he'd mark it and turn around and you'd be 40 metres down the ground on your own. So probably a bad habit, but you could sort of see he was a class above, and, we just sort of played to his strengths. So, but we were tight, and in those days, no mobile phones or whatever. So if one of you was going out somewhere on a Saturday night or a Sunday, you'd sort of ring one or two of the other boys, and they'd ring the other guys, and you'd all meet up. In those days, you had to meet at the prescribed time because no one had a phone to ring each other.
Yeah.
So, we were very, very tight, and still very close, a lot of us today, for sure.
Well, so with that, I'm 1 year different with you, but with my birth date, same with you being February, with me being January, I ended up sort of with that older group in front of me. Did play a game, I didn't make the Norwood High under 13A side, but against Brighton, where we had John Hall and Michael Palm, and beat Brighton, and Sticks kicked 7, and we still won. So
really?
I do remember that. And
they were hard to beat in those days. I know that, because they had, a lot of good footballers. I think Tony McGuinness had headed over there in his last year. He might have been a year younger than Chris and Stephen, but I think he was playing, and they had gun sides in those days. And it's really sad now. A lot of these schools don't have a team anymore. Yeah,
and with Bone, I've always wondered how high Bone could have gone in cricket. Mm-hmm. He was him and Sticks, mate. Sticks was just tall, as we know, right back then. He was actually bowled off the wrong foot. He was unorthodox as a cricketer, where Bone was a gun keeper. and I actually filled in at a state primary school game, Pete, has made up the numbers, and Bone ran me out without facing a ball. So I've always had that with Bone ever since. But I reckon I'm a mile in front of the beers I've got out of that over the years, because I certainly wouldn't have made any runs anyway. So, yeah. Yes.
We used to play a lot of backyard cricket at the Kernahan House in Wilton Avenue there, and he was hard to face, Stephen. It was like facing a windmill, and he's bowling off the wrong foot, and he was quick and all that. So that was sort of a bit nasty back in the day.
Oh, I can imagine it would have always been competitive. Yes.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Go through. So your league debut in '81. Simon, go through that, mate.
Yeah, well, Steve Highwood was our seconds coach in those days, and we all loved the ace. And he came up to me a couple of weeks before that, sort of early June, said, "There's a state game in a few weeks. We'll have a few out, and you'll be playing league football." And I'd never considered it at that stage, sort of early 1981. And anyway, John Halbert was very good to a lot of us kids in those days, and I had reasonable skills, and coming from where he had at Sturt, he sort of liked that. So I think we had 6 or 7 guys on the state side: Ralph Sewell, Paul Weston, Cornsey, Carey, Jimmy LaHoo, Keith Coleman, all those blokes. And so I got picked, and we played Woodville at Woodville. I stood the great Ian Detman, and he was my first opponent.
Jeez, a couple of lunatics there.
Who's who?
Yeah, he was a nasty piece of work. Looking back,
good
no,
man.
he wasn't. He was
Good man, Ditto, yep.
These days. And anyway, we were down. I remember we were down at quarter time or half time, and in those days we used to beat Woodville, routinely. But we got back and we beat them by 3 or 4 goals, I think. And then all the guys came back the following week from the state side, and I held my spot, which was just about a bigger thrill, really.
Yeah, it's fair.
We played Sturt at Footy Park, and all those guys came back in the side, so I got a chance to play with all those guys, which was, just marvellous looking back now as a young 19-year-old kid, and probably 58 kilos, and I'm playing with Corns and Weston and Carey, and I think Ralph Sewell was one of them as well at the time. They sent me a telegram. I remember they sent me a telegram from my first game from Perth, all those boys, so that was nice. And then, unfortunately, my third game, I was only 19, and we had dinner at home the night before the game, and my brothers and I used to play a lot of backyard footy, even in the dark. And I went out and got tangled up with the clothesline, playing 2-on-2 with my brothers, and landed flat on my bum, and I did my groin pretty badly, and I could hardly walk the next day, and I had to play. We played South and Adelaide Oval. I wasn't going to tell Jack Albert what I'd done, so I played, and I only got put on the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. And I went up to Jack on the Monday and said, "Jack, I've done my groin, I can't play." He said, "But you're only on for 3 minutes." I said, "No, I didn't warm up properly, and I've just done a groin, and believe it or not, I missed 6 weeks. I just couldn't walk, let alone run, so probably shouldn't have played in the game. Missed 6 games and played the rest of the year in the twos, and we won the flag.
Yeah, I was going to say you won that's the flag under, because Jamie Mason played in that, I reckon.
Yeah, Maso played for sure. I've been in touch with Maso. He's overseas at the moment on a trip. You've probably seen that. So he was a gun, Maso. He just struggled to sort of crack it at Glenelg for whatever reason, and as you know, went to North Adelaide. But Maso played. He was a star back in the day, and we were lucky that year. We beat Port, I think, by a point in the grand final. There was only 1 goal kicked for the southern end, I think, for the whole game, and we kicked it, late in the last quarter to win the game. So always good beating Port with seniors or reserves. We didn't do it much on the seniors, so we take it when we can get it.
Now you're doing a little bit of research. You're a wingman. Were you a dashing wingman, a traditional dashing wingman?
I wouldn't say I was that quick. A lot of people thought I was, but I wasn't. I had probably reasonable ability to read the play a couple of steps ahead, so I was pretty fit, so I'd sort of spend all day running. In those days, you tended to stand the same guy most of the game.
Yes, it was a real battle of the wingmen back then,
Yeah, so I always thought I was fitter than most blokes, so I sort of just run just for the sake of it, really, just because I sort of in my own mind, the bloke on me halfway through the third quarter would start struggling and I'd still be going pretty strong. So that was always part of my plan. Quite honestly, sometimes I'd just say to the bloke, "Come on, mate, let's go for a run." And the bloke would look at it and go, "What?" I'd say, "Come on, let's go." And there was no reason for it. It was just a matter of I was trying to,
mind games, yeah.
Yeah, mind games and run them down a bit. And, normally the last quarter, and we had a good side too, most of the time. So you sort of take a risk and run forward of the play a lot in those days because the game wasn't as structured as it is today. So sometimes it didn't work and you'd get, you'd be in strife from the coach. But most of the time you had freedom to sort of improvise a bit and make stuff happen. And, talking to Stephen Stretch sometimes these days and Andrew Page and some of those guys, Torrens were a bit limited at the time and it was easy being a wingman in a good side. So you sort of tried to take advantage of it a bit. But the game was very different and you weren't sort of quite as accountable as you are now.
Trying to remember, you playing the 82 grand final, Simon?
I played in the seniors in 82. Yeah.
Well, that was a great day, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think we came from fifth that year in the finals, and I was on the bench a lot. I think I played maybe 17 games that year, and I reckon I was on the bench for about 12 or 13 of them. But the game was just changing. The interchange bench had come in the previous few years, and they were starting to work out how best to use that. And I held my spot, for the latter part of the year, and after being injured a bit earlier in the year again. And, I think we got done by 10 goals by...
Yeah, I was mucking around, obviously, there, Simo. I brought out my Nord... I did bring out my Nord bias there. Look, and I think Glenelg were a bit unlucky then too. Then you only had 6 days on the break after the prelim, and, of course, that had been the Granger prelim, and... Super Carey.
That was a big day, a big couple of weeks, the Granger thing, and it was a wet day, that prelim, and there was a lot of pressure on it. It was a hard-fought game, and obviously we got over the line by a point, and then, as you know, grand final day was hot.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a couple of our blokes running up and down the spot early in the second quarter, and I thought, well, that's not going to be good, but, at the back of my mind, I thought I'll probably get on early. But we were, struggling, and as you know, 6 goals from a bloke called Rick Neagle didn't help either.
Yeah, we hear about that occasionally too. Yeah,
I think we have talked about it.
Yeah, probably haven't heard it today yet, but it's only 1 o'clock. Yeah, it's 12. Plenty of time for Neags to shove that out. Yeah, so
yeah, that's right. Yeah, but a good grand final, all the same. And I mean, back in the day, the big four were alive and well, weren't they?
Yeah.
Port and Sturt, Nord and Glenelg, and you look through the grand finals at that time, and those teams were pretty routinely part of it, weren't they? Which was great.
And then playing under Graham Campbell, of course.
Interesting, that one.
Yeah,
he's a different cat. Obviously, start of 83, I think we lost our first 7 before he got sacked.
Yeah.
And a lot of us loved him because he was playing us. And, we threatened to go on strike and all sorts of silly things. And the club reneged and reappointed him. And then we played South the following week and got done by 8 goals again. So we lost our first 8.
8, yeah.
But then got close to making the finals again, as it turned out. I think we had to win maybe 2 of our last 3 or something. I think we lost 2 of our last 3 or something like that.
I think you needed results to go your way as well on memory, I think. Yeah.
So, but we loved Graham and, some funny stories, strangely enough, the one that comes to mind was at the parade, and the rooms were a bit funny in those days. There was sort of the away room had sort of another room attached to it, and you couldn't really see what was in there. And Graham was sure Nord had their spies in there, and that they were listening to the pre-match. So when he pulled the blanket off the whiteboard with the team on there, he read the team out, Christian names only.
Oh my God!
So it was Tony and Stephen and Christopher and Wayne and Alan, and we're sitting there, honestly, trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
And he used to eat a lot of apples. And if you were sitting too close to him at the time, you were getting bits of the apple and all sorts of stuff was going on. He's reading the team out, thinking that Nord are listening, and before we ran out one of these games, I remember him saying, and don't forget Neville Roberts, he's a bit like 007. He's got a licence to roam. He's 009.
Jeez, Rocky will love that. I'll bring that up with him. Yeah.
I'll never forget him saying, we're running out like laughing.
Oh.
So it sort of didn't go all that well at times. We loved him, but probably wasn't ideal, and in a lot of respects. And at the end of the day, the club made a call on him at the end of '84, and fortunately, probably appointed Studley, which was a great move, and probably the move we needed to sort of discipline us a bit. And
I do have to bring up one quick game with you, Simo. At Glenelg in '83, Pete set the scene for you. The legs are up. It's the last quarter. Glenelg were coming. Nord have coming the ball out of defence. Error. There's a kick out on the full, so it's Glenelg's free. Mm-hmm. The Nord guys have run ahead of the ball. Jeff Wilson's marked the ball. I'm sitting next to him in the crowd at Glenelg. Simo's trying to grab the ball off Jeff, and we're yelling at the Nord guys, come back, pick, McDermott up, pick. And Simo's going, give us the fucking ball. And yeah, so I don't know if you can remember that, Simo, but I did say to Jeff I'd bring that up.
I remember there was two blokes who wouldn't give me the ball.
Yeah.
On the far side.
Far side, correct. Yep.
And I just wanted to get hold of it and get it on because I think we were down at the time, or the game was close. And you didn't do anything that I wouldn't have done myself. I can tell you that, because the game was in the balance and it was important to get it on. But I do remember it, and I remember swearing, and that wasn't a nice thing to do in front of young people and kids. But you had to do what you had to do.
Oh, it was a bit of fun. It showed the tribal warfare.
Exactly.
You boys were truly the 19th man on that occasion.
Oh, we were
directing traffic, holding onto the ball.
Yeah, Chavo, get back there. Don't worry, it was full on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I love all that stuff. It was, in a different world, and no one got offended. And, it was just part of the game, really, and you walked it off afterwards and you moved on. So better days, really, boys.
What were some of the crowds like back then? Because we sort of
sensational.
We forget about it these days because we don't see how some of the grounds were full to capacity at stages. But what was it like playing in front of a home crowd at Glenelg there with a packed stadium?
I used to just really love it. Like, you'd wake up Saturday mornings, you were playing footy, which is what you sort of lived for in those days. You'd get there early to watch the reserves play and get yourself prepared. You had a routine. There was always a lot of people around, and it sort of you felt bigger than Texas running out onto the ground. And you'd play games at Footy Park, minor round games, and there'd be 17, 18, 20,000 people there. And it was just incredible. You go back to the club, and the club would be chock-a-block full with people. And it was just hard to explain. A bit like playing AFL footy these days in Adelaide for Port or the Crows, where everyone knew you or knows you, and you got sort of looked after. It was a bit like that, not to the same degree, of course, but there was a lot of benefits. Everyone seemed to know you. If you went to buy a pasty or a sandwich, people would talk football with you. And, one of the guys who owned one of the snack bars around from where I worked in the bank at Brighton there, he was a mad Nord man. And
he's a good man, yep.
Yeah, he was a good man. and you'd sort of think after the game, you'd be in the showers after the game, slumped on the ground because you'd lost thinking about the week ahead. And you felt like you couldn't even go to the snack bar to get your lunch because you couldn't put up with the grief you're going to get from this guy. And it was just everywhere. Yeah. Adelaide was consumed by it, and I really, really loved it.
But Simon, I think let's go. Those days it was very much quite often everyone would run into each other at Sam's on the Saturday night, and if we didn't see at Sam's on the Saturday night, you'd be at the Bay Disco on the Sunday night.
Yep.
And then Lenny. So anything would have happened amongst the players, it was all sorted out by Sunday night, and that was over and done with. And
well, 90% of the blokes you'd meet, as you know, would be great blokes. And, we're all a bit different on the ground and all had our nuances, I suppose. And some people, more physical than others, and some people are smart with their mouth and whatever. But 9 times out of 10, you'd meet those blokes and take it home and have a quick drink, and one drink might turn into more. And next thing you know, there'd be 30 blokes from 4 or 5 different footy clubs in the back corner at Glenelg having a laugh on a Sunday night and thinking, should better get out of here, got to go to work tomorrow and train tomorrow night. So,
and it didn't matter if you were a player or a supporter, like obviously I'd known, just purely you Glenelg guys, because I'd known Bone and Sticks through cricket at 12, so I'd come over and say hello, and it was, everyone knew each other. It was,
no, of course.
It was a great days.
We had some massive nights there over the years, and the odd night where someone from the club would ring Cornsey at midnight on a Sunday night and say, you better get down to the club and get those boys out of there, because I think Harry had told the security guards they weren't allowed to touch us back in the days, and we sort of knew that, and probably a bit arrogant about it. But when we saw Graham walk in at 11:15, 12 on a Sunday night, we knew it was time to go.
Fair call. Mate, before we move on, I'm sure Malcolm's itching to start asking you about your AFL, but you didn't mind
85 and 86.
85, 86.
Yes.
But you didn't mind a sausage roll. 230 goals in 225 games. That's very, very good effort, mate.
Well, I didn't believe in passing it once you run an inside 50. I just couldn't see any sense in that whatsoever. And I actually tell a funny story. John Seabohm was playing full forward for Glenelg one day at Footy Park, and I'd known Steve since he'd come down to Glenelg in the late mid-70s with Mike Armfield, who was my cousin. And Steve's was playing full forward, and I was running along the boundary line at the northern end on my left foot. And in those days, you didn't have to centre it. You just about to have a shot all the time. And I've kicked a left foot check sider on the run, and somehow or other it went through. And everyone's run around, and we didn't high five in those days. It was just a pat on the arse and well done, and all the rest of the blokes saying great kick. And Steve's walked out from full forward and said, "Yeah, well, I didn't need bloody lead because I knew you wouldn't pass the bastard anyway." So he was my favourite grumpiest teammate. He was right. I wasn't going to pass it, and he just let me know in an understated manner, but different area, you could get away with it.
Bloody good player too, John Seabohm. Very quietly efficient.
He played 300 something games and came down as a full forward, but you always knew at centre half back he'd punch from behind if he marked it. He'd just start running wide, and on that left foot he'd kick it 55 metres to you and lace it out. So we were just so fortunate. We just had such a star-studded side in a lot of ways. So, I didn't mind getting on the end of it, boys, and having a shot for goal, that's for sure.
So now the glory years of 85 and 86, and you the real North Glenelg era, really, of 85, 86, 87. Yeah. And, had Glenelg, you'd lost, obviously, a lot of finals, and, particularly grand finals and that. But, go through the glory times there, mate.
Yeah, well, a lot of the boys, Stephen and Chris McDermott and Tony McGuinness, all played in the 81 losing grand final. And then we all played in 82 and lost. And sort of then I think Peter Carey, 83 we didn't make, 84 Peter Carey got suspended in the finals, I think, against Central. We lost those 2 games in a row from there.
And at the prelim
for
attempted striking, which was crazy. And then the prelim final, at one stage, Glenelg I reckon you were 2 goals 14 at one stage in that prelim against Nord. So it was it was a bit of a crazy game that day as well.
I remember looking at Peter Carey, who was on the bench sitting there, and he's looking at me in the last quarter like, do something. And I'm looking at him going, mate, I'm trying. I could just see him pleading to get us over the line. And of course, it didn't happen. So that really stung us a bit, and it probably hurt Graham Campbell more because it probably cost Graham Campbell a job. And you could argue whether that was right or wrong at the time. But 85, for some reason or other, don't remember being nervous. In those days, you drove yourself to the game and listened to your own music, and you had your car there. You weren't in a bus or anything. And I just remember rolling up. It was a nice warm day, thinking, we're going to win. I'm going to play well. Let's go. So there was no nerves or whatever. And I remember feeling the same way in '86, just thinking North were, reasonably warm favourites in '86, but I just don't remember ever thinking that we were going to lose, even though I think it was '85, we were down by nearly 5 goals early in the second quarter.
Yeah, where Robertson bounced the ball in that forward pocket running to the lake southern end, and it bounced away from him.
Yeah, we all talked about that a lot in the days afterwards because our blokes were right under the pump and they had so much of the ball and our back line was chasing all the time. I remember Wayne Stringer and Chris Duthie chasing Robbo, and Robbo sort of bounced it over his shoulder and then almost still got it back, and somehow or other Wayne laid a tackle and Duth got it out of there, and I think Kimmy Hosman ended up kicking it. I haven't seen it for years, but Tony Hall might have got on the end of it, and instead of us being 35 points down, I think we went down and kicked the goal. It was 23 points. So, and I do remember standing on the wing, on the grandstand wing, looking at it when we were 29 points down. I think David Tiller kicked the goal, and I looked down the forward line. I thought, well, Kernahan hasn't hardly had a touch yet. Stephen Copping hasn't had a touch yet. I remember thinking we'll still win.
Okay.
Which I don't know why, probably youthful exuberance back in the day, but I really remember thinking that. And I think we went in at half-time 2 goals up after being 5 goals down, the 10-minute mark or something. So and that was pretty much the ball game, and we kicked a goal early in the third quarter, which just made us all feel like, it's going to be our day. So
we were two pretty fair targets to kick to, like Kernan. We know he's one of the all-time greats, but Copping, Inspector Gadget arms, which they seem to never stop, and he always marked the ball at the highest height. So he played tall. Right. He played tall. He was a very, very good player.
And we had Adam Garton down there too.
Yeah,
I think Adam Garton might have kicked 4 in the grand final in '85, and he was probably getting the third best defender. Back in those days, which gave him a real chance. And, the Stringer boys sort of toughened us up a bit, and Scotty Salisbury and Big Wayne Henwood sort of runned around grunting at people, and he was just a man mountain and good. I remember him ragdoll and Michael Redden, and Michael Redden was a champion bloke and a champion footballer and strong, but not half as strong as Wayne Henwood was. So we should have had an incredible team, and probably looking back to lose Kernahan and McGuinness at the end of that grand final, still win it the following year as underdogs was probably even a greater achievement in some respects.
Happy days.
All right, happy birthday. Kieran Strawn from the Adelaide Footy Club, obviously drafted in 2019. Much upside for this young ruckman at the Adelaide Crows, but only playing 5 games in 4 years with the Crows, and at times has been underutilised behind Riley O'Brien, who has led the most hit-outs. Will 2024 be his year for his breakthrough?
Oh, look, I'm bitterly disappointed that the Crows haven't had a look at Strawn. For mine, Riley lacks in the ruck craft. It's just to hit the ball. He lacks.
So he's getting good numbers, but he's not getting value. Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah. For me, Strawn's a more natural ruckman. I would have had a decent look at him by now. I think it's ridiculous. Someone 4 years on the list and you still don't know whether they're good enough by now. I would have at least had a proper look at him. But well.
Considering ruckman and also backman seem to be the flavour of the month come trade talk at the moment, you would have thought that this gentleman here might actually be on someone else's radar, but Adelaide seem keen to keep a hold of him, and I'm hoping 2024 they do have a pretty decent look at him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I've got to admit, if I was North Melbourne, I'd make a play for him.
Well, now that Goldstein is obviously nominated Essendon, so
I'm just using North Melbourne as the example.
Yep.
I'd certainly make a play for him if I was another club.
Absolutely. All right, in 2018, the NFL, New England's Tom Brady becomes only the third quarterback to record 500 career touchdown passes as he connects with Josh Gordon in the Patriots' 38-24 win over the Indianapolis Colts at Foxborough.
Tom Brady, enough said. Really, just those 2 words.
500 career touchdowns. Not bad for a player that was taken pretty late in the draft. That's the other big thing about it. A lot of people sort of go that, he was always a superstar. Couldn't run, almost the Dane Swan, a little bit of, not quite your stock standard player, gets taken a little bit later and then becomes an absolute legend.
Becomes a legend.
Absolutely. All right. 1988, we'll stay with, we'll go to racing. Australian motorcycle racer Mick Doohan wins the Australian Grand Prix at Phillip Island to clinch his 5th World 500cc championship. All 5 titles were won on a Honda.
Yeah, great, fantastic at his craft, Mick Doohan. That's probably as good a way as putting it. He was certainly always around the mark for quite a while, and 5th World Championship, he was a gun.
Absolutely, and a legend of obviously racing. 1988, we'll keep with cricket. Australian wicketkeeper Ian Healy overtakes countryman Rod Marsh to record, world record of 355 Test cricket dismissals during the first Test win against Pakistan. Catches Wazzy Akram off of Colin Miller to reach the milestone.
Funky, yes. Don't think he had purple hair that day, so the funk. Living in America, hopefully he's one of our listeners in America.
Yep.
Healy was a great keeper.
And
look, he's certainly in chatting for any talk about the best keeper. How good he was off Warne.
Do you think he was the last Australian pure keeper? Because obviously we talk about Gilchrist being an unbelievable keeper, but he could bat so well as well.
I still think Gilly was a better keeper than he's given credit for because he was such an explosive batsman. He was a lot better keeper than he's given credit for. Mm-hmm. So,
Ian Healy, though, would be certainly relishing that he took Wazzy Akram as his world record catch.
Yeah, look, as I said, if he in any ballpark, grout and Talon, Healy's name gets mentioned. That's probably the best way to put it.
Absolutely. And to finish us off on the MLB, Cleveland win their last game under the Indians' name, beating the Texas Rangers 6-0.
It was more the name change, wasn't it?
It was. So obviously back in 2021, looking at a lot of things going on in the world, the Indians was classified as some sort of not racial, but disrespectful to the Indian culture. Changed the name and have since then, and maybe looking at changing it again as well. So we'll see how that one plays out. But good on them for winning their last game as the Indians 6-0.
Yes.
All right, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time big finish.
All right, mate. Cricket talk. Where are we at with the cricket? The Redbacks obviously just starting yesterday at Karen Rolton Oval. Jake Lehman putting in a captain's performance, but I'm sure you're going to give us your thoughts on that one, mate.
Yeah, I did go along yesterday. It's always the best day of the season as a Redback supporter. We're equal top at the start. But yeah, our batting was disappointing. For young McGurk's dismissal before lunch, 10 minutes before lunch, caught it deep, long off Freeman, was a pretty average shot. Mm-hmm. We'd gone from none for 35. Kelvin Smith's again teased with a 20.
Yes.
Henry Hunt gets out. Drew failed and McSweeney failed. So we came 4 for 50 odd pretty quick.
Yep.
And so you're always playing catch up from there. And then Lehman and Malenti got in a partnership. Malenti hit him beautifully. Mm-hmm. Jeez, he's a clean hitter. Mm-hmm. 70 odd, but yet again he didn't convert into 100. I did say he was unlucky to him later on, and he said, "No, he hit it straight to him." I said, "No, who caught you? You were unlucky."
Yep.
In Freeman from Sydney. Look, he's probably as good a catch for cricket ball as Billy Frampton was marking on Saturday. So I do reckon he was a bit unlucky, but it wasn't a great shot.
Yep.
And again, look, 300 at Carlton isn't a big score.
No.
It's a grease lightning outfield.
Yes.
Currently Tasmania 1 for 156.
What
Jake Weatherall got a stinker of a decision yesterday too.
Yep.
I'm watching thinking he's got nowhere near that.
Yep.
And did ask Wes Agar at fine leg. And, he replied on that affirmative. I did catch up with Jake, and Jake is going to come on the show at some stage. So it was great to catch up with Jake afterwards. I was probably with him for probably 20 minutes, half hour after he batted. So it was great to catch up with him. And
that's the beauty about Karen Rolton, I suppose, is that little bit more intimate. What are we expecting today? It's a little bit cooler, a little bit, are we expecting the pitch to dance around a little bit, or are we thinking it's still pretty flat being early in the season after the footy's obviously been on it most of the. They've
tried. It's a drop in. It's a drop in that started at Karen Rolton. This is the first game of it.
Gotcha.
The consensus among the players late yesterday was at least there was more pace and bounce in it than what there had previously been at Karen Rolton. So they thought it was a bit better wicket, but for mine it looked like late in the day that this is going to be a belter. And Malenti dropped a hard caught and bowl, which would have had him 2 for 68 yesterday.
Yep.
And at the moment they're obviously cruising along. So I'm a bit of a fan of Jewel. I think his name, I'm surprised his name isn't being brought up as a potential replacement for Warner. I think he's right amongst it.
Okay, fair call. Australian, the Australian women's team getting pipped at the post last night by a 1 or 2 runs with a ball or 2 to spare. Matthews had a bit of a night out, and I think they need to watch out for her in the next couple of games. Are we starting to see teams starting to catch up to Australia a little bit?
I think a little bit, but also I think this girl is a gun. It was it was virtually 2 runs a ball, 130 out of 64.
Yes, that was when I saw it as well.
Yeah. And look, I think that's what you just got to remember, and that can be cricket, one player.
Yep.
And I think this girl was a very, very good player.
Yep.
So
looking forward to seeing her over the next little bit, and obviously the Men's World Cup coming up as well, which we'll talk about as that progresses.
Yeah, it was just 8 million warm-up games, and look, the warm-up game against Pakistan last night where Warner bowls 2 overs for 41 and retired. Yeah, they're Mickey Mouse games. Just get on with it.
Fair call. All right, let's move on to the AFL trade talk. It's, like we said a bit earlier, a bit of a silly season at the moment. The one that jumps out for me at the moment is probably Ollie Wines seems to be a name that potentially could end up at Sydney. That surprised me when I sort of read that.
I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard sea with Wines. They don't know what to do. They know inside mid is where he really must play, but they're going, but hang on, Rosie, Butters, Horn Francis are our makings of our potential premiership winning midfield. So I don't think Port know what to do.
Yep.
And Wines end up, on a wing at times this year, which was
it looked a bit lost.
Yep. So I just don't know. I think they're stuck and don't know what to do.
Yep. Brownlow medalist, back at the Brownlow, Port Adelaide's basically top 3 players were Horn Francis, Butters and Rosie. So, it's a real quandary, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm more interested in what happens in their B&F. Let's wait and see on that one.
We'll find that out over the next.
I think where Wines finishes there is a bit of a
indication.
And let's be honest, he's had a couple of pre-average years since winning the Brownlow. So
fair call. You did mention this a little bit earlier. Nathan Bassett doesn't have his contract renewed for 2024 at Port Adelaide. For me, that's staggering considering what he had to work with in the back line.
Yeah, look, I can't deny I will. I'm a Nord person. Obviously, I know Nathan very well. I regard him ridiculously highly coaching-wise, and so does everyone else around the trap. So, look, let's just wait and see on what happens. But, I'm more than disappointed at that decision, but that's Port's call.
That is. Now, a little bit earlier on today, it looks like James, I think it's James Riley from the Crows, looks like he might be heading off to Geelong. Does that open up an opportunity for Nathan to end up back at the Crows?
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would have thought so as well, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, we just got to wait and see. Look, Bass was in the running for the head coaching role at one stage too at Adelaide, so I'd be disappointed if he wasn't interviewed at least.
Absolutely. Any other trade requests that are sort of tickling your fancy at the moment?
No,
I don't think there's anything that's jumping out.
Look, the wah-wah about Oliver in the last couple of days, I take all that with a grain of salt, and I think people are jumping at shadows there. Look, I think there's probably a little bit of truth in it that he was upset with Melbourne with the hamstring. Melbourne were upset with him, believing he wasn't professional enough. So there could be a little bit of truth there, but I think there's a lot of scuttlebutt rumours behind the scenes. I think it's a load of crap. So I'm going to leave that at that because,
Tom Duday?
Does sound Brisbane.
Is there absolutely any chance he's staying at Adelaide?
No.
No.
Look, and I don't blame Adelaide for that. Look, Dodie, let's also remember he had a pretty lucrative long-term offer in front of him and through his manager as well. Probably made an error in not signing with that, and then it's changed since he's done and it's his second knee reco. So I think someone on 2 knee recos,
you are taking
a risk, and it's a big thing to offer someone after 2, the age of 26, a 5-year contract. So I think Adelaide are being responsible. And look, I'm a fan of Tom as a person.
Absolutely.
No, I really want to.
That's why I ask.
I really want to emphasise that. I love the stuff he does with Bedford. I've seen him with Alex with wheelchair footy. Alex, the superstar who tossed a coin at the SANFL grand final, and his mum just messaged me a minute ago, Sonia. So, and that. So Alex is a person I have huge regard, and I love seeing Tom with him. So that, in some ways, is my favourite Adelaide player for that sort of thing. But I don't blame Adelaide for him in that way. I think he was probably poorly advised.
Yes.
And
it's,
I think, it does look like Brisbane. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We move on. Tennis Australia announced that they're going to start a day earlier than scheduled. They've listened to the players on the basis that usually the backlog of round 1 games takes them into the early hours of the morning for the first couple of days.
Early hours of the morning's probably even been complimentary.
Look, I have been at Melbourne Park at 4:15 in the morning watching a 5-set match. So I do get it.
I would have fallen asleep by that stage, Pete. I've got to be honest.
Fair enough. I do get it. I think it's smart. I think the men's and the women's tour is going to change quite a bit over the next few years, and it's almost going down the path of the LIV and the PGA type tour, where money is becoming such a big issue with it that they need to get together to make sure that they keep the status quo as it is. Maybe a few less tournaments, maybe a few more prize money tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, let's be honest, it's insane to be playing at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So
exactly right.
Because you've also got to remember that winner starts at a mile behind the eight ball for the next round because of the body clock.
Absolutely.
So,
rugby Australia, the Wallabies, mate. I really didn't want to put this one on the sheet, but I sort of had to. Where has this all gone wrong? Once the darling of Australian sport, now basically being knocked out in the group stage.
Can't see Eddie surviving this one. Look, who knows? It's they're certainly almost back to really
square one
and strip it back and try and work out a strategy from there, because at the moment, it's not good.
It isn't. I totally agree with you. All right, mate, to finish us off, the good, the bad, the ugly for the week, mate. What's your good?
Oh, I think the 2 grand finals.
Yeah.
That's probably it in a nutshell.
Yep.
Just incredible. Look, there were so many things. The Collingwood with the Dacos family, Moore presenting it to his son. It was McRae announcing his wife's had a baby that morning. Like, geez, could they do anything else right? Selwood last year.
Yes.
They're making this nice and hard for us blokes.
Yep.
So, I just think that was the ultimate. Look, the bad, I'm going to go for Laura Kane for the week before. Foot and the mouth disease again. Yeah.
The good for me that both grand finals, the NRL, the AFL, but also the SANFL grand final. I think Glenelg were absolutely stunning. My bad and my ugly for the week is probably Carlton at the moment. I have to give them a little bit of a clip for an unbelievable first quarter and then falling away a little bit to a very, very good Brisbane team. But that's just me having a little bit of fun there.
Charlie Curnow was probably a little bit disappointing there. That it stood May and it's in the finals. I'm trying to think who else Carlton had played.
Yes.
To start with. But he had two gun opponents and he'd struggled and that. You thought, right, Payne out. They don't want to play Andrews on him because they want him to intercept. So it's Gardner.
Yep.
Charlie, it's your time to shine. And they started well and he was involved early and you thought, hey. But, yeah, he just didn't do enough.
For me, Charlie and McKay in the same team is what is my biggest question mark. Yeah. Every time that McKay doesn't play, Charlie is absolutely dominant. Every time that McKay does play, things just don't quite seem to add up. Yeah,
which is weird because you would have thought,
two tools,
another opponent there. We can get a better matchup, work it there. Maybe they can learn from Collingwood's ball movement and structures. So yeah.
Are you interested? Just a bit of a side note, going back to our trade details, especially with Adelaide. Are you interested? I'm quite very interested that Adelaide seem to be looking at a lot of forwards at the moment when their deficiencies are obviously a midfielder and defenders.
Yeah, I think the one on Burgess, the interesting bit is he actually played down back when he was at Westies. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's chance for him to come to play down back. Just because he stopped the VFL goal kicking the last couple of years, if I'm saying, hey, young fella, you come with us, we're going to give you a decent look at you down back. Hopefully that's what it is for me.
That could be where it starts.
Yeah, let's wait and see.
All right, mate, another huge episode. We thank Tony Symonds for his time today, obviously talking about the Glenelg and Glenelg Premiership. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better next week.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.